Hello, welcome pen friends. My name is Chris and I'm back with the 5th ink profile in the February 2019 Ink Flight 25. So today we're doing this beautiful color here, Stone Road of Gion. And it's an ink from Japan, and it is from the Kyoto TAG Kyo-iro group. So let's dive right in and see. I was just really super excited to try this ink out. It's taken me a couple of days because it's been super busy here. But let's go ahead and put it in the bath test like we usually do and see what happens. And we'll just let that work. This is the last one. This is Kyo-iro, the bright green. There it is right there. And it definitely just faded it out almost completely. If you really try, you can almost read it. So it was very typical, I thought, fountain pen ink. So there we have that. I just couldn't help but pull this stone out. It's a river rock from Vermont. And I wanted to show you because it made me think of this color. The Stone Road of Gion is very unusual too. So let's go ahead and get started in the Rhodia Gold book. We'll move this stuff aside and see what I found out. Okay, so here it is. Let's see. I found this one at Jet Pens, and I also found out that several of the others are also available there. But I wasn't finding this one, this Stone Road of Gion, at all the different places. So you'll probably have to do a little research. Here it is in the broad nib, right down to this point here. And there it is on some Tomoe River paper. And then I switched into the Lamy fine nib for all the rest of this. So, you know, it's just so unique. In fact, at first, I just didn't think that anything I had was anywhere near like it. But as the process rolled on, I did find one that's similar. So here's the chromatography. Pretty interesting there. You can kind of, hopefully you can see that appears to be like a grayish blue, steelish blue. And then I'm not really sure. That looks amber or a little bit red. But it's quite, I think it's quite complex. So let's go on into the next notebook here. And that is the CVS Caliber notebook. little notebook from CVS with paper made in Vietnam. So let's see what we got here. And here it is. Now, it's considerably lighter in here, but it still showed up with the broad nib. And then you can even read it in the fine nib, but it was a little harder to write with it. I wrote down weak in the fine Lamy nib. So, you know, it wasn't all that impressive when you drop down into that drier nib. Okay, and then in the little Nemesine notebook, here we go. Now, just please disregard this portion here for now, because this was an ink that I found that was very similar, but it's the only part of it that's not in today's ink. But this is today's here, and you know, you can kind of see it's like to me, it's like a brownish gray or a muted brown. It's quite interesting. And I thought it looked terrific in the Moon Man Mini Glass nib. It shows up quite well. And I did not have to redip, but I only went here and here. But I didn't have to redip it at all. So that it was flowy, you know, it was pretty nice. So then later in the day, after I'd already done this, I went and got the Rohrer Klingner Sepia, which I kind of mixed up because I did a little smear test that I had no idea would go on that far. It was really wet on that nib, and it, you know, I smeared it, but oh well. You can see that the writing part with Rohrer Klingner Sepia is much darker. I know you could I could see it even through the camera. And yet, this is all the base color, because I used it to kind of, with a paintbrush, with the ink, with the Rohrer Klingner around it. And I thought that was impressive how similar it is. It does go darker, but it goes down to that same lightness, I thought. I mean, it's so similar in that regard. But we'll see it on the ink panel, too, before long. So, one more notebook, and that is the Cafe Note that I'm still using by, it's either Nanami or Nanami, and now I'm not really sure how to say it, paper company. This has got Tomoe River paper in it, and a lined grid. And on the left, here it is with the broad Serendipity It's a Yo-Wo nib. And then here it is on the right with the Lamy Vista fine nib. And, you know, it lightens considerably into the fine nib. And yet, I don't have any trouble reading it. It's okay. It's just about at the edge of where I couldn't tolerate it any lighter. I don't like really light writing. I like to be able to read my writing back real easily. So I liked it in here. Especially in the broad nib. So, and there's a little shading here and there. I mean, I can see it, but it wouldn't be something I would like tout as the main feature of this ink. I feel like the main feature of this ink is its uniqueness, really. That, in my opinion. Okay, so let's hop right on to all the paper samples. I got quite a few. Here's Tomoe River 52 gram white. And I'll hold it up as far as I can. We're starting to have that, you know, losing daylight here today. But I wanted to get this out because I know we were all excited to look at this. Here it is, painted on with a paintbrush, the ink. And then we go into the broad nib and in the fine nib. And, you know, it held up good. I would much rather use the broad nib to write a letter. But I could say that about any ink, even the brightest ones. So here's Clairefontaine 90 gram French rule. And there it is. Let's see. Make sure you get... See, it looks darker on this. More of the ink, I believe, kind of stays on top. And then I wouldn't really say that about the fine nib, but it stayed nice in that broad nib. It's quite dark. So, you know, this is really nice, smooth paper, real heavy paper. Okay, so next is Rhodia 80 gram dot grid, the white. And again, it kind of flattened, the color flattened out on there. I kind of think that Tomoe River paper, much as it may lighten it up a little, is the best paper for this ink. But okay, so here it is, broad and fine. Little bit better, I felt like, on the Rhodia than the Clairefontaine. That's something, that's not the first time, though, that's been my opinion on an ink. So here is Hamlin Optic 90 gram paper. Okay, let's see if we can get focused and not too many shadows. It's dark on there, but it did give some contrast, some shading on the little swatch. And same thing here, there's some shading, and I didn't like it in the fine nib on this paper, but you know, that's pretty much across the board really for me with this one. Okay, real quick, here is the Leuchtturm 1917 dot grid paper. No problem with it on there in my opinion. I mean, it flowed nicely and it did well on this paper. I'm not turning this over because there really was no, I don't think this is going to be hard to clean out of the pen either. There's no, whoops, there's no, no bleed through anywhere. So, okay, let's get on to, this is the G. Lalo paper that came in the Ink Flight box. It was the stationery goodie for the month, one of them. And on this one, it really darkened. I guess we'll need to turn that over. No bleed through here either. Here it is with the broad nib and the fine nib. Gee, I think I'll have to try this paper with something I already know I love for an ink and pen combo, and then see what happens. Because so far, oof, I probably would, I don't know. But, you know, it takes us time to form a decent, educated opinion. So, here's the Office Depot College Rule paper with the Stone Road of Gion. Oh dear, I'm losing daylight. You know, it kind of reminds me of how it did on the Leuchtturm. Let's see. It's quite similar. Maybe not exactly, but it's quite similar. So I was happy with it, and no bleed through at all. So, you know, it looks nice, but it really needs a broad nib, I guess would be the conclusion for that. Okay, let's look here. Oh boy, it's disappeared. You can't read it at all. Whoops. Help if I got it where you could see that. I mean, just barely, kind of smudges here and there. Okay, but this was a fun panel in many ways, many more than one way. This was quite a challenge too, because I didn't have anything quite like this. Our ink of the day is right in the middle, the Stone Road of Gion, right there. And when I started, I was convinced that the closest match that I had was probably this Exa Brown that I don't know much about. A pen friend sent me the sample, and the little vial said 1950s Hungarian. So I'm not sure, but I think it might be a vintage ink. So I was a little bit worried, thinking, well, that might not be something we could easily get. But as I progressed in checking through my inks, I realized that Rohrer Klingner Sepia has a lot in common with it. And it's like dialing the saturation up. You know, it's quite similar, really. In fact, more similar than it appears here. And I think we may have seen that when I showed you the notebook, how, yes, it's darker, but it certainly is right in that same color family. So anyway, so my conclusion for myself was, oh good, because I really like Rohrer Klingner inks anyway. They flow well in some of my drier pens and all of my pens. They clean up well, they behave well. I just like the brand. So there's a lot of other ones going on here. I'm not sure why I put the Tasha, the CHA, Cha, I think that means tea. I put that there, I guess, primarily because that's one of our next reviews, but it won't be the panel for it because I have several that are more similar to that. But these are all kind of unique inks. That's what everything on this panel kind of has in common, I think. They're not run-of-the-mill 6 inks match it kind of inks. To me, they're all kind of a little bit unusual or special. And I think, you know, this ink reminds me of Birmingham inks, but I don't have a ton of samples from them. I have like maybe 15 total samples. So there may be something that Birmingham makes that matches better. This is just, you know, coffee bean that I had available. And it shows a long ways away in color from that. In fact, all of them are. You know, I felt like Krishna Dark Chocolate was so unique that it turned out not to be as similar. I thought that was going to be like dialing the saturation, but it was more Rohrer Klingner Sepia. That ink really makes me happy. I'm going to use that more. I've had the sample. I've used it a little in a vintage pen, my only vintage pen that I have. And I enjoyed it in that because I knew it was okay for that pen and it wrote well. And so then we've got Pelikan Edelstein Smoky Quartz, which is just really unusual and in its own right there. So this is it. Hopefully you've got something on this panel, or you can, you know, begin to get a feel for where this ink falls. It's like a grayish, brownish, kind of muted and dusty kind of color. And I know someone watching that will love this, I think, you know, or at least in a broad nib anyway. So, and maybe more than one person. Okay, let's see what happened when I did the visual journal. It was not spectacular. You have to tune in your subtle senses here because it's pretty much, after it dries, especially, any dramatics go away. Now, you know, maybe there was more ink involved here because this was nice how it, you know, edged and it dried a little darker. But everything here, you know, I laid down the water first and then the little ink. And, you know, that was the process up here anyway. And it you know, it's interesting. It did show me that nothing else really emerged for color. Not really. It just went to a lighter shade and almost looked gray, but brown too at the same time. So I did do that background thing because I just love doing that anyway. And so there's that. And, you know, I think you'd need a spectacularly contrasting dark. I mean, you might even want to use like the Krishna. I don't know. You'd probably be looking, though, for a permanent ink to go over it because it would probably distort it. I forget. There's some art things I'm just now learning. So here it is, as it is. And I think it's still worth doing even though it's sort of flattened out. So as far as what's next, we've got just 2 inks left. I can't believe it in this ink flight. So we're down to these 2. This beautiful kind of a reddish, maroonish, gosh, that's pretty. It looks like it's got a lot going on. And then we've got this beautiful blue. So, I mean, both seem to be more saturated than how we started. We started on the really light saturation end, and we've stayed pretty light, although this one, the Moonlight one, was, that was darker. But I'm really curious to see what happens when we get these two in the nibs. So that's what's going to be next. This one first, and then this one. And it does kind of look like, looking at the calendar, like there won't be any trouble finishing this before the end of the month. And then we have some more Tasha inks and a lot more others that we all want to see. And I've got votes in on brown and green and other colors that you want to see. So there's just no lack of what's next, really. It's just a matter of time. time. So before I go, I just wanted to show you a couple really pretty things made by two fellow Texans that, okay, so first of all, this beautiful pen sleeve that was made by Kara Overman, and I won it on Larry's drawing. So I think there were two, and I won. It was the Valentine's drawing. So I've got the two pens that I'm using for these reviews in it. It's gorgeous. She does such beautiful work, and I really love it. Thank you to Kara for making it, and thank you to Larry for always having such fun stuff for us all. And if you don't already follow Larry, you really should. He's got a lot of interesting stuff, and he's the most enthusiastic fountain pen person I've ever really encountered. Like he's got the energy. And so, okay. And then the other one is a handmade, and that may have gotten dirty in the post office, postcard made by my pen pal, who is also a fellow Texan. And we write back and forth, but she makes these beautiful postcards. It's fabric and flexible, but just gorgeous. I'm not going to turn it over because I don't want to give away any addresses or anything like that, but just so beautiful. It's very inspiring to me to have these beautiful things, and also to remember I used to spend more time making things, and I want to get back to it. So it's a choice. It's like putting our creativity things on the calendar, making time for it, and so that's what I plan to do. So you guys can hold me accountable because I'll have to show you whatever I make. So I'll want to. So okay, that's the video for today. Thank you for your patience. I had a couple of extremely busy days, but everything's gone smoothly. So I'm back on my pen desk and pen table, and I'm eager to continue and look into these other two inks. So thank you very much for being here. Bye for now.